The Lonely Princess. The palace of Xylaria was shining under two silver moons. Its tall towers touched the sky, and its walls glowed with alien crystals. It looked like a place of beauty, but for Princess Aelira, it was nothing but a cage. Aelira was different. Her people were proud, cold, and cruel. They believed in strength, in power, in conquering other worlds. But Aelira was gentle, curious, and full of dreams. She loved the stars. She loved the quiet songs of the universe. For this reason, her people called her weak. They whispered behind her back. They shunned her in the royal court. Even her own family treated her like a shadow. She often walked alone through the endless halls of the palace. The walls were made of silver stone. The floors shone like mirrors. But there was no warmth in this place. Every step echoed with loneliness. The servants bowed, but never smiled. The guards followed, but never spoke. Her life was full of silence. One night, Aelira went to the highest balcony of the palace. From there, she could see the endless stars. Two moons floated above, lighting her pale face. Her long silver hair flowed like liquid light. She stood there, staring at the universe, wondering, is there anyone out there who would understand me? Is there someone who would not call me weak? Is there someone who could see my heart? Her eyes were full of sadness, but also hope. She had never left her world. She had never touched another planet. Yet her heart longed for the unknown. The people of Xylaria feared the unknown, but Aelira loved it. In the dark sky, she felt free. Suddenly, a faint sound came from the observatory crystal near her. It was a machine built by her ancestors to listen to the stars. For years, it had been silent, but tonight it was alive. The crystal glowed, sending out strange pulses of light. Aelira walked closer, her heart racing. She touched the surface, and a voice whispered through the air. It was not her people's language. It was something different, softer, human. She could not understand the words, but she could feel them. The voice carried warmth, courage, and hope. Her eyes widened. Her lonely heart skipped a beat. Aelira quickly checked the readings. The signal came from a small blue planet far away. Its name, according to her star maps, was Earth. Her people considered it unimportant, a young world with fragile beings. They never bothered to notice it. But Aelira felt something powerful in the signal, a spark of life, a spark of connection. She whispered to herself, they call me weak, but maybe weakness is only what they do not understand. Maybe there is strength in kindness. Maybe there is truth in the heart. That night, she could not sleep. She kept thinking about the signal, the sound of that voice reaching across the stars. It was like someone had answered her unspoken prayers. For the first time in her life, she did not feel completely alone. The next evening, she returned to the observatory chamber. Her hands trembled as she touched the crystal again. The signal was still there, faint but alive. She smiled softly. It was like a secret between her and the universe. Nobody else in the palace knew. Nobody else cared. From the shadows of the hall, two guards watched her. They exchanged worried looks. The princess was strange, they thought. Always dreaming, always staring at the sky. They reported her movements to the royal council. But Aelira did not know this. Her world was about to change. The lonely princess stood on the balcony again. The cold wind brushed against her skin. She looked up at the stars, her eyes shining with hope. She whispered into the night, if you can hear me, whoever you are, do not stop. Do not leave me. I will find you. The palace behind her glowed like a prison, but the stars above looked like freedom. The signal from Earth kept calling, and deep inside, Aelira knew her destiny was no longer tied to her cruel people. Her destiny was among the stars, and somewhere far away on a small blue planet, a human man was looking at the same sky, not knowing that a princess from another world was listening to him, not knowing that soon their lives would collide, not knowing that love was waiting beyond the stars. The forbidden encounter. The next few nights, Princess Aelira could not rest. The signal from the blue planet played again and again inside her heart. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard that strange human voice. It was unlike anything she had ever known, gentle but strong, weak yet brave. It called to her in a way her people never could. Inside the observatory chamber, she worked in secret. The crystal panels glowed under her touch, revealing hidden star maps. She adjusted frequencies, studied transmissions, and traced the waves of sound. Finally, the origin became clear. It was not random, it was a message. It came from a small craft orbiting Earth. Someone out there was speaking to the stars, not knowing who might be listening. Her heart pounded. She leaned closer to the glowing crystal. She whispered, "You are not alone. I hear you." But the man on the other side could not hear her voice. Their worlds were too far apart. Her technology was advanced, yet still bound by rules. Contact with lesser species was forbidden. Her people called it a waste of time. To them, humans were nothing but soft creatures of flesh. But to Aelira, this one human voice was worth more than all the cold approval of her kind. Late that night, she stood on her balcony once more. The sky above Xylaria was filled with millions of stars. Her silver eyes shimmered with determination. She would not just listen, she would answer. She pressed her hand on a small crystal pendant around her neck. It was a relic from her childhood, given by her mother before she turned distant and cold. That pendant still held energy, old but pure. Aelira poured her will into it, channeling a single beam of light. A ray so thin it could cross the darkness between worlds. She pointed it toward Earth, toward the small human craft. The signal was silent at first, like a star that refused to wake. But then the light blinked. Once, twice, 3 times. A code of greeting. Far away, the human astronaut, drifting outside his ship in the shadow of Earth, noticed the glow. His visor reflected the strange pulse. He froze. His heart skipped. This was no star, no normal satellite. He raised his hand instinctively. He tapped his small wrist light against the surface of his suit. Once, twice, 3 times, the same rhythm. Aelira gasped. He had answered. For the first time in her life, someone had spoken back. Not with words, but with light. Her eyes filled with tears. She whispered, "You can see me." Though the man could not hear her, his actions told her enough. He was not afraid. He was curious, brave, and alive. From that night forward, the balcony became their meeting place. She sent light through the pendant, and he replied with his suit. Together, they built a language of flashes and pauses. She learned his name, Elias. She repeated it softly under her breath, savoring its sound. In return, she sent him her name, Aelira. When he answered back by flashing it in rhythm, her heart soared. But secrets are never safe in a palace of watchers. The guards had followed her too many times. They had seen her pendant glow. They had reported everything to the royal council. That council of hard-faced lords gathered in silence. They declared the princess was foolish. They said she was wasting her bloodline on creatures unworthy of even being studied. Her father, the king, stood above them all, his voice cold as ice. Contact with humans is forbidden. Their world is weak, their people unfit. Do not shame us again. Yet Aelira could not stop. Every night she returned. Every night she sent her secret light. And every night, Elias replied, he showed her the earth from his craft. She saw oceans shining like liquid jewels, forests like emerald seas, mountains crowned in white snow. She had never seen a world so alive, so full of colors her cold planet had forgotten. And Elias, with a steady hand and warm spirit, was the heart of it all. But the shadows in her world grew darker. Her people were watching more closely now. Her freedom was shrinking. She knew that if they discovered Elias fully, he would not be safe. Her heart trembled with fear, but she also felt stronger than ever. For the first time in her life, she was not truly alone. Aelira whispered into the night as her light blinked again. Elias, they will try to stop me, but I will not leave you. Far away, Elias blinked his light in answer. Though they spoke in silence, his meaning was clear. He would not leave her either. The forbidden encounter had begun. A fragile bond formed across the stars. But bonds like this, in a world of cruelty and pride, could not remain hidden forever. The council had already decided. If the princess continued, the human would be captured, and the human world would learn what it meant to be noticed by Xylaria. For now, Illyra stood under the moons, her silver hair shining, her heart beating with both fear and hope. She knew her life had changed forever. She knew her people W. The bond begins. The secret lights between Illyra and Elias grew into something more. At first, it had been random flashes, small greetings across the darkness. But soon, it became a true language. Illyra would blink her pendant in patterns, and Elias would answer with a lamp on his suit. They learned to send names, feelings, and even small questions. It was slow, it was imperfect, but it was theirs. Illyra spent hours at the observatory crystal, studying human transmissions. She pieced together words, shaping her mind around human language. Each night, when she spoke those words in secret, she felt closer to Elias. "Friend," she whispered, touching her lips as if saying it would carry across space. When Elias tapped the word back through light, she smiled. Her heart no longer felt like a cage. It felt like wings. Elias, too, was changing. For years, he had drifted in silence, a lone astronaut serving his mission. His life had been routine, technical, stripped of warmth. But the light from the alien princess gave him hope. Every time it blinked in the void, he felt alive. He would whisper her name inside his helmet, Illyra. He had no idea if she could truly hear it, but somehow he believed she did. The bond between them grew stronger. They began to share visions through the observatory crystal. It was a rare ability, dangerous and forbidden, but Illyra could not resist. With a touch of her pendant, she opened a window between their worlds. One night, Elias looked up and gasped. Through the visor of his helmet, he no longer saw only stars. He saw her face, pale and luminous, her silver eyes filled with wonder. Her lips moved in silence, yet he understood. She was speaking to him, not with words but with the heart. Illyra trembled as she reached out, her hand touching the crystal screen. For a moment, she felt the warmth of his presence. A human so fragile, yet stronger than any warrior in her world. Her people mocked humans, but she saw no weakness in him. She saw courage, loneliness, and a spirit like fire. But their secret could not remain hidden. The palace guards had grown restless. The council spies had tracked her every move. In the royal chamber, they whispered of treason. They called her dangerous, accused her of betraying her kind. Her father's voice thundered. "Enough. No daughter of mine will shame this throne with weakness." But Illyra was no longer weak. The bond with Elias had changed her. That night, when she returned to the balcony, she felt fear. What if the guards followed? What if they discovered Elias? She hesitated, holding the pendant close to her chest. But then the sky blinked back at her. 3 steady flashes, his signal. Her fear melted away, replaced by joy. He was waiting. He always waited. She answered, her light dancing across the darkness. Together, they built stories. She told him of her world, its twin moons, its towers of crystal, its cruel court. He told her of Earth, its oceans, its storms, its songs. She had never heard of rain before, water falling from the sky. When he described it, she closed her eyes and imagined the sound. She imagined standing beside him, her hand in his as water touched her skin. Her people called it weakness to dream, but to Illyra, it felt like strength. Days passed, and their bond deepened. It was no longer light signals alone. It was laughter, longing, and silent promises. Illyra began to believe that maybe destiny was not written by her people. Maybe destiny was written by her own heart. She whispered into the night, "One day, I will cross the stars, I will find you." Elias, watching from his orbit, whispered the same, though no one else could hear. But shadows moved closer. The council had noticed the strange energy patterns around the princess's chambers. They spoke of punishment, of ending her shame once and for all. Some even suggested capturing the human who dared answer her. Aïlira sans danger. Her heart was no longer just her own. It belonged to Elias. And if her people tried to harm him, she would stand against them. The bond had begun with light, but now it was fire, a fire that could not be hidden. Aylira looked up at the stars, her eyes fierce, her soul alive. She whispered, Elias, I will not let them take you, I promise. Far away, the human astronaut raised his hand to the dark sky, as if he could feel her vow across the endless space. Their hearts beat in rhythm, two souls bound by light, love, and defiance. And in the silence of the universe, a storm was already forming. A storm that would test their bond. A storm that would decide the fate of both their worlds. Discovery and danger. The Council of Xyleria had grown restless. For too long, the princess had been slipping away into shadows. For too long, the royal guards had reported her nightly visits to the observatory. The old lords gathered in the throne chamber, their cloaks heavy with pride, their voices sharp like blades. She shames us with her weakness, one growled. She wastes her gift on a world of dust. Another hissed. Her father, the king, listened with a face carved from stone, his eyes cold, his hands clenched on the throne. When the guard spoke of strange lights flashing between stars, the council stirred with anger. This was no longer just rumor. It was evidence. Evidence of betrayal. That evening, Elira felt the weight of eyes on her. As she walked the silver halls, the servants lowered their heads more than usual. The guards followed too closely, their silence heavy. She knew something had changed, but she refused to stop. Her heart pulled her back to the balcony, to the sky, to him. Elias was already waiting. His small suit light flickered against the dark canvas of space. 3 short flashes, his greeting. Elira smiled softly, her hands trembling as she returned the signal. The bond between them was no longer just curiosity. It was a lifeline. Every blink carried meaning. Every pause was filled with longing. But tonight, her joy was cut short. The air around her shifted. A shadow moved at the edge of the balcony. The guards stepped forward, their crystal spears glowing. Behind them stood a figure in dark robes, a member of the council. His voice cut through the night. Princess, enough. Aelira froze, clutching the pendant to her chest. Her silver eyes widened, but her voice remained steady. You have no right to be here, she whispered. The counselor sneered. You shame your blood, speaking to vermin, to creatures of flesh and weakness. Her heart burned with anger. He is not weak, she said louder this time. He is stronger than any of you. The guards moved closer, but the counselor raised a hand. Not yet. Let her watch. Let her see what happens when weakness spreads. And, with a signal from his wrist, the trap was sprung. Far above Earth, Elias felt the shift first. His instruments blared with strange energy. He turned, and before him appeared a ship cloaked in silver light, massive and silent. Its hull glimmered like ice, its weapons aimed with precision. He barely had time to breathe before beams of energy wrapped around him, invisible chains pulling him away from his orbit. Aelira screamed, her voice echoing across the balcony. No! She ran to the crystal panel, but the counselor only laughed. See, princess, your human pet is nothing but prey. Her heart pounded, her lungs burned. She could see Elias struggling, his light flashing wildly, desperate. He was being dragged into the belly of the alien warship, trapped, alone, surrounded by enemies. Her tears fell hot against her skin, but her voice did not break. You cannot harm him, she said, trembling. But the counselor's grin widened. We already have, and soon the king himself will decide his fate. Aelira's mind raced. Her people were merciless. They would crush Elias without hesitation. To them, he was not a man, not a soul, only a weakness to erase. Her chest tightened with rage. For the first time, she felt the fire of rebellion. Her loneliness had turned into strength. Her weakness had become defiance. She turned her gaze back to the sky. Through the chaos of beams and shadows, Elias's light still blinked, faint but clear. One last message before he vanished inside the alien ship. 3 short flashes, 2 long, 1 short. She recognized it. It was the human code he had taught her. It meant one word: hope. Her hand shook as she pressed the pendant against her heart. She whispered back through the storm, "Hold on, Elias. I will find you." Her words may not have reached his ears, but her heart carried them across the void. The counselor turned to leave, satisfied. But Elira stood tall, her silver hair flowing in the cold night wind. Her eyes glowed with fury. Her voice, once soft and broken, rose with strength. "You call me weak, but you will see how strong weakness can be. You will see what happens when a heart chooses its own path." The guards hesitated, startled by the fire in her tone. The counselor scowled, but deep inside, even he felt a flicker of unease. This was not the timid princess they had mocked for years. This was something new, something dangerous. And in the silence of the palace, a storm was brewing. A storm that would tear open the skies of Xylaria. A storm born from love, from defiance, from a bond that refused to die. Elira turned back to the stars, her fists clenched. She whispered once more, "Elias, I am coming." The rescue. The halls of the palace were silent, but Elira's heart thundered like a storm. Her people had captured Elias, locking him inside their warship like a trophy. The council believed the matter finished, the shame erased. But Elira's spirit burned brighter than ever. She would not let him be destroyed. That night, she walked the forbidden tunnels beneath the palace. Old passages carved by rebels long ago, sealed off by her ancestors. Few remembered them, but Elira did. As a child, she had wandered here, seeking escape from the cold eyes of the court. Now those tunnels would lead her to Elias. The warship hung above the planet like a silent predator. Its body was carved of crystal steel, its weapons alive with energy. Inside its chambers, Elias struggled against his prison. He was trapped in a cell made of light, walls that burned when he touched them. His breath was heavy, his body weak, but his spirit refused to bend. He pressed his hand against the barrier and whispered into the dark, "Elira, I believe in you." On the surface, Elira climbed into a hidden docking bay. There, an ancient scout vessel slept, covered in dust. It was small, fragile compared to the warship above, but she did not care. She activated its systems, her pendant glowing as it merged with the ship. Engines roared to life, breaking years of silence. The guards nearby turned in shock, but before they could stop her, she was gone. The stars rushed past her as the scout ship pierced the sky. Her silver eyes fixed on the warship, her heart steady with fire. She whispered, "Hold on, Elias, I'm coming." Her craft slipped through the shadows, invisible to most sensors. She remembered every lesson she had secretly studied in the observatory, every weakness of her people's ships, every blind spot. Her vessel was small enough to slip through the cracks of their pride. Elias sat in the cell, his light fading. He thought of the blue oceans of earth, of the forests, of rain. But most of all, he thought of her, the princess with eyes like starlight, the only one who had ever truly seen him. When the ground beneath him trembled, he looked up in shock. The warship's alarm screamed. An intruder had entered. Through the corridors of crystal, Elira moved like a shadow. Her pendant glowed in her hand, guiding her, protecting her. She faced guards with spears of energy. They shouted for her to surrender. But she answered with silence, moving faster than their eyes. The tunnels twisted, but her heart knew the way. At last, she reached the chamber. Elias lifted his head. Through the haze of the cell, he saw her, silver hair flowing, eyes fierce. His lips parted in disbelief. "Elira," he whispered. Her heart broke at the sight of him trapped, weak yet unbroken. She pressed her pendant against the cell. The walls hissed, the light barrier cracked. Her voice trembled but steady. I told you I would find you. The prison shattered, lights spilling like water. Elias stumbled forward, collapsing into her arms. For the first time they touched, her skin cold as moonlight, his warm as fire. Two worlds colliding, bound by one heartbeat. But there was no time for peace. The alarms grew louder, soldiers marched closer. The council's voice echoed through the ship. Princess, you have doomed yourself. Surrender now. Aelira lifted Elias, her strength fierce. Never, she whispered. She guided him through the corridors, the pendant shining a path. The scout vessel waited, hidden within the docking bay. But every step was hunted, every turn filled with danger. Elias leaned against her, his body weak, but his spirit alive. You risked everything, he murmured. She looked at him, her eyes burning with truth. For you, I would risk more. They reached the bay as the first soldiers arrived. Blades of light clashed against the doors, sparks flying. Aelira pushed Elias inside the vessel. She touched the controls, her pendant merging once more. The engines roared, fire lit the chamber. The doors burst open, guards poured in. But it was too late. The scout ship leapt into the stars, leaving the warship behind. As the ship soared into the night, Elias held her hand. Their fingers locked, fragile yet unbreakable. He whispered, "You save me." Aelira shook her head, her silver hair shining in the glow of starlight. "No, Elias, you saved me long before tonight." The warship loomed in the distance, its hunters already preparing to follow. The danger was not over. The storm was only beginning. But in that moment, in the small vessel racing through the void, they were together. Two souls who should never have met. Two hearts that had defied empires, and neither would ever let go. War choices. The scout vessel drifted through the darkness of space. Its engines burned with stolen energy, its frame trembling after the escape. Inside, Aelira sat beside Elias, her silver eyes fixed on the stars. For a moment, there was peace, a fragile silence between them. But both knew the storm was coming. The Council of Xylaria would not forgive. The capture of Elias had been a warning, but his rescue was an insult. The entire empire would rise against her choice. And now the warship's signal had already spread. Armies were moving, weapons preparing. Her people had declared war against humans. Elias leaned back in his seat, his body weak but his spirit alive. He had never imagined becoming the center of such a storm. He had been one man, one astronaut, alone in orbit. Now he was the spark of a fire that threatened two worlds. He turned his eyes to Aelira. "You should leave me," he whispered. "They will destroy you if you keep me." But Aelira shook her head, her voice steady. "No, Elias, they call me weak, but my heart is stronger than their pride. I will not abandon you." Her words carried weight, yet her soul trembled. For years she had longed for meaning, and now she had found it. But the cost was high. Her people were preparing fleets of crystal ships, their weapons aimed toward Earth. If the war began, countless lives would burn. The Council believed humans were nothing. But Aelira knew better. She had seen the courage in Elias. She had felt the strength of his spirit. She could not let his world be destroyed. The vessel landed on an abandoned outpost, hidden among shattered moons. Its hulls were empty, its machines broken. Here, they found shelter for a short time. Elias stood weakly, leaning against the cold walls. Aelira helped him, her hands gentle, her eyes fierce. He smiled faintly. "You fight an empire for me," he said. "And I would fight the stars for you," she answered. But their peace lasted only moments. Through the crystal screens, Aelira saw the movements of her people, fleets gathering, banners of war rising. The Council's voice echoed in her mind. "We will burn their world, and we will erase your shame." Her heart ached. She was torn between blood and love, between empire and truth. If she stood against her people, she would become an exile, hunted until the end. But if she stayed silent, Elias and his world would be destroyed. The choice was impossible, yet also clear. Her voice trembled, but she spoke. I will fight for you, Elias. I will fight for Earth, even if I must stand against my own blood. Elias took her hand, his warmth steady against her cold skin. You don't have to do this alone, he said. She looked at him surprised. You are one man. How can you stand against fleets? But Elias only smiled, a quiet strength in his eyes. Because humans do not give up, because we fight even when the sky falls. And I will not let you carry this burden without me. His words lit a fire inside her. This was why she loved him, not for his strength of body, but for the unbreakable spirit in his soul. Her people had never understood this kind of power. They measured strength by cruelty, but true strength was in kindness, in courage, in love. The stars outside flickered as Xylaria's fleets spread wider. The war drums echoed through the void. The first moves of battle had begun. The humans below still did not know, but soon they would see alien ships fill their skies. Aelira clenched her fists, her voice sharp with resolve. Then we stand together, Elias. We will show them that compassion is not weakness. We will show them what it means to fight for love. The outpost shook as distant blasts rang out. Her people were testing their weapons, warning shots across space. The choice was no longer far away. It was here, burning, demanding her answer. She looked into Elias's eyes, the human who had given her hope when she had nothing, the man who had defied fear to answer her light. Her heart no longer trembled. Her path was clear. I am not afraid of exile. I am not afraid of my people. I am afraid only of losing you, she whispered. Elias pressed his forehead against hers, his breath warm. Then you never will. Outside, the fleets moved closer. The war of choices had begun, and at its center stood a princess and a human. Two hearts defying empires. Two souls holding on to hope, ready to change the fate of two worlds. Love beyond worlds. The stars above burned with the light of war. Xylaria's fleets spread across the void like wings of fire. Their engines roared, their weapons charged, their banners of conquest shining. And beneath their shadow, the blue world of Earth waited, unaware of the storm about to fall. Inside the hidden outpost, Aelira stood with Elias, her heart heavy but fierce. This was the final moment, the point where her choice could no longer be hidden. Her people called her a traitor, a princess who had abandoned her throne, but she no longer feared their voices. For beside her stood a man who had given her something greater than a crown. He had given her love. The first strike came swiftly. Bolts of crystal fire cut across the dark, warning shots meant to terrify. Elias gritted his teeth, watching from the outpost screen. They'll attack Earth soon, he whispered. Aelira's eyes hardened, silver fire glowing in her gaze. Not if I stand in their way. She activated the ancient systems of the outpost. Forgotten machines roared to life, powered by her pendant. Through the void, a beam of light shot forward, not as a weapon, but as a message. The fleets of Xylaria paused, their commanders startled. The signal carried her voice, strong and unshaken. I am Princess Aelira of Xylaria. You call me weak, you call me shame, but I stand here today to show you the truth. Humans are not fragile prey. They're strong in ways you never understood. Their strength is not in cruelty, but in spirit, in courage, in love. Her voice echoed across the stars, reaching every commander, every soldier. Some sneered, some hesitated, but none could deny the fire in her words. Beside her, Elias stood tall, though only one man. His presence gave her strength. Together, they faced the fleets of an empire. The council responded with fury. Her father's voice thundered across the comms. Daughter, you disgrace our blood. Stand down or be destroyed. But Aelira's answer was clear. I am no disgrace. I am your future. If you cannot see it, then I will create it without you. The fleets advanced, weapons glowing. Elias gripped her hand, whispering, This is it, Aelira. Whatever happens, we face it together. She nodded, her silver hair flowing in the light of the screens. Together, she said, her voice steady. The battle began. Bolts of energy clashed against the shields of the outpost, explosions shaking the halls. Aelira's pendant blazed brighter, merging with the machines. She sent waves of light across the fleets, disrupting their systems. Ships staggered, commanders faltered. Her people were powerful, but their pride blinded them. They had never faced someone who fought not for conquest, but for love. Elias stood at her side, guiding her. His human mind found paths she could not see. Where her people relied on strength, he relied on creativity. Together, they turned weakness into power. The fleets roared, but their formation began to break. Some captains lowered their weapons. They watched the princess defy her father, standing beside a human. They saw not shame, but courage. For the first time, doubt spread through the heart of the empire. The king himself appeared on the central screen. His eyes cold, his voice heavy. You dare destroy us for the sake of one human. Aelira raised her head, her voice clear. No, father, I save us for the sake of all. If we continue down this path, our empire will rot from pride. But if we learn from them, from humans, we may yet find life. The silence that followed was heavy. Her father's rage burned, but so too did the weight of truth. For even he could see the fire in his daughter's eyes. The same fire that had once lived in him before the throne made him cruel. Slowly, the fleets began to pull back. Not all, but enough to shift the balance. The war was not won, but the first spark of peace had been lit. The council would rage, battles would still come. But something had changed. The heart of the empire had been shaken. In the quiet after the storm, Aelira turned to Elias. Her body trembling from the power she had poured into the machines. But her smile was soft, her voice tender. We are not alone anymore. Elias held her close, his arms steady, his voice filled with warmth. No, Aelira, we never were, not since the night you sent me light. Together they looked at the stars, two souls from different worlds, bound by a love that defied empires. She was a princess shunned by her kind. He was a human lost in the void. But together, they had found strength beyond war, beyond fear, beyond pride. Together, they had found love. And as the fleets drifted away and the stars shone once more, Aelira whispered to the sky, "Now, I'm not alone.